everyone, this is Paul Gale from paulgalenetwork.com, and thank you for joining me today for video game news. It is November 4th, 2021, and these are the top stories of the day. To kick things off, we have the highly anticipated Nintendo quarter financial results to go over from their Q2, which occupies that July 1st through September 30th, 2021 timeframe. A couple of these charts will show off life-to-date sales, but I will also break it down into how well did games sell and the system sell during that last quarter. To kick things off, though, the big number to look at is the lifetime of Nintendo Switch to date. 92.87 million units have been sold from this system's start back on March 3rd of 2017 to September 30th, 2021. Just 4.5 years, 19 quarters. If you look at this 92.87 million and compare it to where Wii was at this point in its lifetime, when it was 4.5 years old, Wii was at about 87 million. So Nintendo Switch being a good 5-6 million almost past Wii's mark, and seeing how much potential there is for Nintendo Switch in the upcoming year really says to you, this is going to be Nintendo's most successful home console ever. Yes, it's a hybrid, but at the end of the day, it is thought to be internally at Nintendo as a home console. Just happens to have a portable nature and a hybrid nature and tabletop mode and all of that, but it's really impressive. If you take a look at Wii, where it ended up at 101.63 million units. That system came out in November of 2006. So its halfway point was around May of 2011. The Wii U came out November of 2012. So in between when Wii had its 19 quarter mark at 87 million to when Wii U came out a year and a half later from that mark, because they came out 6 years apart, and trickling a little bit past Wii U's sales, into early 2013 or so, the Wii only sold another 14 million or so. After that 87, which it came to quickly, it kind of trickled down and had another 14 to go. Nintendo Switch alone, in the last 3 months of this year, will probably sell 10 million. That's going to push it up to about 103 by the end of the year. And then going into 2022, in that first quarter, it probably should sell another 4 or so million. So I definitely expect that the console's going to have around 107 million by the end. Nintendo originally planned to ship out 30 million, but with a semiconductor shortage and chip shortage and whatnot, they reduced their numbers to about 25.5. Now it's at 24, which is 20% less than their original goal for the year, and that's okay. I'm sure that they're going to bounce back. It looks like Nintendo Switch OLED model is doing healthy. It's sold out constantly pretty much across the globe, and I think it brought just enough amount of hype to keep the system fresh on people's minds and last until there's some other revision down the road. Maybe it's a Nintendo Switch Plus, late 2022 or early 2023, maybe the end of 2023, hard to say. Or maybe they stretch out the generation longer because OLED is still doing gangbusters out there on the market, that the next one is Nintendo Switch 2. But if you look at what's left from this point on in this console's life, you have 2 huge Pokemon games coming out. You just had a Metroid that launched. You just had a new Mario Party that launched. You have all these evergreens that have come out in the last 4.5 years that are still quarter in and quarter out selling 1 million plus time after time again. It's a very profitable system for Nintendo. You're starting off 2022 with Pokemon Legends Arceus, and that's coming after Shin Megami Tensei 5 and the 2 Pokemon remakes, You've got Triangle Strategy, another big game. You have the rumored Resident Evil Outrage, which would be huge. You've got a Monster Hunter Rise DLC expansion coming next summer. You've got Bayonetta 3 along the way, in 2022. You have The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2. It won't be called that, but you've got that sequel planned for 2022. We've got Metroid Prime 4 eventually. So the outlook is very strong, and that's not everything that we know. You know, E3 will come along and there'll be something else that they have. Probably some secret, some surprise games for the rest of the year, and then some titles lasting into 2023. We've got a new Kirby. We've got Splatoon 3. We probably have another Xenoblade Chronicles of some sort that will be revealed, maybe even at the end of this year. So the outlook is strong. I thought that the number would be around 93.6. I think that was my official prediction of where it would be at right now as of September 30th. It's at 92.87, which is pretty close. I wasn't off by a lot, but you could see why. You know, they had a little bit less successful of a quarter than we thought, but they still sold quite a few units. 3.83 million in the last 3 months is a lot, especially considering, one, you've got competition from Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5, yet you're still able to sell 3.83 million. You haven't had a price drop. And a big factor is, in July, they announced the Nintendo Switch OLED model. Knowing that a system was going to come out 3 months later, on October 8th, people were still buying Nintendo Switch enough that it was the best-selling piece of hardware in North America for the rest of July, for the rest of August. September, it was number 2 as PlayStation 5 took over. I wouldn't be surprised if October it's number 1 again, largely in part thanks to OLED. So even though fewer people were buying the system leading up to the launch, enough were doing it to still have a successful quarter. We already know that the Nintendo Switch OLED model opened up with 600,000 plus in its opening weekend worldwide. We also know that looking at the Famitsu charts week in and week out, it's continuing to sell very well, whatever Nintendo could restock. Yeah, they had to reduce the forecast, and that's understandable, from 30 to 25.5 to 24, but the system's going to have no problem probably hitting that 103 by the end of the year, and somewhere in that 106, 107 category, like I mentioned before, come March 31st next year. It'll also be an exciting time because we'll get to see how well did Metroid Dread do. You know, we know it blasted past 500,000 in its opening weekend, but we don't know exactly just how far past, and we don't know where it's at now. Is it at 1 million? Is it at 1.5, 2 million? We'll see. But looking at the past Nintendo consoles, I keep saying that Nintendo Switch, I don't think can do any less than 140. I think it has a good shot at doing 160, which would become the number 1 best-selling console of all time, Nintendo or otherwise. Long run, it really depends what Nintendo wants to do, how they want to stretch out the generation. When will they release an upgraded model? If they do, when will they release a Nintendo Switch 2? Will the next system be backwards compatible? When will they start officially having a reduced price of the Nintendo Switch, of the Nintendo Switch Lite? Will they phase out the base model and bring the OLED model down? Will they officially introduce a player's choice lineup of cheaper games? Because I'm going to tell you, Nintendo systems usually find a way how to eventually work their way down in price, whether it's home console or handheld. You can imagine the impulse buy of a Nintendo Switch Lite at $100, that's going to be a very attractive system. That's not a lot of money for someone to just jump into, and especially if at that point you could get Nintendo's first-party games and some select third-party games for $30, half off. That's really nice. You bring the Nintendo Switch down to $200. That's also attractive. Maybe at that point the OLED drops to $300, and then you release the new Nintendo Switch or Nintendo Switch Plus at $400. Is that too many SKUs at once? Maybe, maybe not. But it could work. So I think the future is bright. It's just going to be a bit of a curiosity. What does Nintendo do going forward? All right, let's go into software sales. That was a decent amount of time spent on that, but it's exciting, you know, can't help it. Here's the lifetime sales of Nintendo Switch's top software. At number 1, the undisputed champ, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, with 38.74 million pieces of software sold digitally and physically worldwide. Previously, Mario Kart 8 together on Wii U and Nintendo Switch passed Mario Kart Wii's record and became the new best-selling Mario Kart game of all time. But now with this number, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, the single Nintendo Switch SKU on its own, passed Mario Kart 8. Passed Mario Kart Wii. So this is now undisputed. This single cartridge, this download, this game, this version of the game, best-selling racing game of all time, best-selling Mario Kart game of all time. Incredible. In its last quarter, it managed to do another 1.66 million copies. A game that's, well, the main game, several years old, but on Nintendo Switch, 4 years old. Talk about an evergreen title. Another 1.66 million. I wonder if Nintendo would consider adding some extra value to the expansion pass service on Nintendo Switch Online with like another 16 courses being added to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. You could buy it for $25 or it's included in Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack. That would be pretty cool. Maybe if you are already an NSO expansion pack member, you could buy it to have permanently at a cheaper price. That's actually a strategy that I wouldn't mind them implementing into stuff like the Animal Crossing Happy Home Paradise, expansion. Yeah, you could buy it on its own for $25. You get it included in the expansion packs 30, and then some of that content will go away, like the archipelago visiting, but the items and stuff that you collect, you'll still own that. But what if you are a $30 a year NSO expansion pack member, paying 50 or 80 and dividing it by 8 or whatever. But what if you are a member and you want to I want to buy that Happy Home Paradise permanently, but not spend another 25? Maybe you could get it at a reduced price. That's a good strategy, I think, that Nintendo could sell NSO memberships. People get more value out of the Sega Genesis Nintendo 64 inclusion. And then thanks to that, you can then buy the Happy Home Paradise DLC at a cheaper cost. Maybe. Because the reason why I bring up Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and the thought of DLC is this game's just not stopped selling. And eventually we have to get a Mario Kart 9, but why jump the gun and release one earlier than need be? The game is selling millions of copies, and this is not even in bundle season. We're going to get the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe 3-month Nintendo Switch Online subscription bundled in with the base model Nintendo Switch this holiday season, Black Friday and stuff. And so that's going to boost up numbers. But even throughout the year, from July 1st through September 30th, the game sold another 1.66 million. That's impressive. So what's the need in, rushing to 9? I'm hungry for 9. Don't get me wrong. I want a Nintendo Kart, or I want Mario Kart 9 already. But maybe this is a way how you stretch it out, and then for Nintendo Switch 2, you would release Mario Kart 9 simultaneously on Nintendo Switch and Nintendo Switch 2, have a big graphical leap and performance leap if you purchased it on the next gen console, but you still satisfy the 120 million install base of Nintendo Switch. See, I think that's pretty cool. Let me know what you think. All right, Animal Crossing New Horizons came in at number 2. 34.85 million lifetime to date. It sold 960,000 copies specifically in that last quarter. Can't quite reach Mario Kart 8 Deluxes, but still very impressive. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is the third best-selling Nintendo Switch game in the last 4.5 years with 25.71 million. It sold another 970,000 in the last quarter. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild at 24.13 million copies sold. That was the launch game. That's what started it all. The fact that we have a Zelda game that's close to 25 million is fantastic. The fact that it sold 930,000 copies in the last quarter, 4.5 years into the game's life, phenomenal. Can't wait for Breath of the Wild 2. If Breath of the Wild 2 could do 3 quarters, I would say, that would be a big success. Of course, Nintendo would probably love it if it sold as many, but I think if you're looking at 18 million, that's still going to be a tremendous success for Nintendo. Depends on their budget, how much they're putting in. It might be another very expensive game to make, so they're going to make their money back for sure, but How much more? We'll see. Pokemon Sword and Pokemon Shield combined sold 22.64 million, and that's a really solid number too. 790,000 more in the last quarter. It's only 500,000 or so away from beating Pokemon Gold and Pokemon Silver from way back in the day. And that's amazing because if it beats that, which I think it's going to, I mean, we're talking about the last quarter of the year coming up. Yeah, there's a little bit of competition thanks to Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, but they're pretty different games. Sword and Shield, they'll do another 500,000 more, and they'll become basically the best-selling games in the Pokemon series since the original Red, Blue, Green in Japan, in terms of green. And that's awesome to have Pokemon Fever this strong. You know, it's cool because I'm a dad now. I have a 6-year-old son and a 4-year-old daughter. And I was, of course, older than them when Pokemon first came out. You know, I was an older kid, but still young enough to enjoy Pokemon. And now my kids in a few years are going to be what I was, my age when the series started. And to see that the cards are still relevant, to see that the toys and the games are still booming, the cartoon series is still running, there's movies coming out, a theme park on the way in Universal Studios Japan, that partnership, live action films with Ryan Reynolds, Detective Pikachu. It's terrific. I'm so proud of the IP, and I'm proud of Sword and Shield, and I'm really stoked to see how well does Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl do, and of course Arceus. Exciting stuff. All right, next up is Super Mario Odyssey, an October 2017 game. 4 years old now, so just under 4 years. It sold 21.95 million. That's the best-selling 3D Mario game of all time. It cleared another 550,000 copies in the last quarter. Super Mario Party at 16.48. Best-selling Mario Party game ever. It'll be interesting, though, like a lot of these things are interesting, to see just how much more does it sell, because it sold another 760,000 in the last quarter, but we have Mario Party Superstars that just came out. It has online. It has a lot of old games that people love from the Nintendo 64 era, boards, but Super Mario Party, did recently get an online mode, so can it attract a couple of different audiences? The folks that want to play the newer, that now has online, more compelling. The older, with online, really good quality online too. Can they both still sell well? This is kind of like a Mario Kart 9 situation where Super Mario Party selling so well, why release another one yet? Well, they eventually did it with Superstars. So I think that Nintendo will eventually release a Mario Kart 9. But Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is doing better for its series than Mario Party is for its. Obviously, it's selling more per quarter, right? So I think 9 is going to happen eventually. It would be awesome if it was the next year one, right? There's always next year. Next up is Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Pokemon Let's Go Eevee. The games are selling fewer and fewer per quarter, but now they have a combined almost 14 million. It probably will hit 14 million. I don't know if this game is going to hit 15, but that's okay. Next up is Splatoon 2. You could kind of compare that in a way to Mario Kart, where they didn't rush for Splatoon 3. 3 is coming next year. It's at 12.68 million so far. Splatoon 2, that is. It sold another 230,000 in the quarter. With Splatoon 3 being announced, I don't see this one going too much higher. Maybe if they have a couple of compelling Splatfests, it will see a boost in sales towards the end. Maybe if it has a reduced price with a couple of months prior to 3's launch, you'll have people that are excited for 3 buy 2 to get acquainted with the series because they missed out on it this whole time. It's the holidays. I think the game's going to hit 13 million, but it's not going to reach 15 or probably not 14 even. Then again, it kind of depends on when in the year, next year, is Nintendo going to release Splatoon 3. My guess is earlier, especially with the recent photos that they put up, the pictures for Halloween artwork and stuff. But we'll see. Ring Fit Adventure, smashing success. This game will probably eventually get a sequel. Will the sequel be handled as DLC that you can purchase, add on? Will it be an actual cartridge slash download? You know, a different entry completely? Will they have any new apparatuses that you could connect to your body, like they had the leg strap and the ring con, of course? Maybe. It already got some free DLC, which is cool, the music mode and such. It's at 12.21 million, and that's a really awesome figure. I love the game. It sold another 950,000. Now you got to realize also, this isn't just a $60 game. It's more expensive because it comes in a package. So talk about the amount of money that Nintendo is making off of it, you know? A couple of other games I didn't mention earlier, but the Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, they did another 260,000 for the quarter. So that's what that did. Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, I'll mention that now. It's at 11.48 million. Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, it is at 7.45 million. Like I said, these games are not on here because they're not a part of Nintendo's top 10 best-selling games. But it's still, what did they sell for, you know, their lifetime to date? U Deluxe, that's pretty impressive because that was a port of a Wii U game. 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, that's a port of a Wii U game, with Bowser's Fury being the really attractive piece for people that already owned the title, like myself. And, you know, in case of a 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, that's a 770,000 unit seller for the last quarter. That game's going to blast through 8 million by the end of the holidays. And it's the newest 3D Mario game for some people. Well, if you count Bowser's Fury, it really is the newest 3D Mario game out there, period. Until Nintendo drops an eventual 3D Mario successor to Odyssey or Galaxy or something new, which I wouldn't be surprised if next year is one. But I don't know. It's such a wild time because we're at such a healthy time in a relatively old system's life. You know, there have been Nintendo generations, like look at N64, 1996 to GameCube 2001, GameCube 01 to Wii 2006, where we already knew about the upcoming console, we knew about its launch games, and we were getting ready to buy it. You realize we're 4 months away, 5 months away, technically, a little less, from Nintendo Switch's 5-year anniversary, March 3rd, 2022. And we already have games well past that, into the end of the year probably, maybe even to 2023. The system's still selling well. They can't make enough. They just released an OLED model. It's selling well. The evergreens are there. This really can be a long generation, and if Nintendo plans it just right, that's what I'm saying. This system could be a 210 million seller at the end of the day. And they don't have to jump the gun and rush to making a Nintendo Switch 2. I think if you wait too long, you have what happened with Wii. Smashing success, but wow, if the Wii U came out earlier, Nintendo could have rolled right into it. Instead, Wii U came out later, a little bit mismanaged in terms of marketing, the product, the name, only 1 year ahead of the other consoles, PS4 and Xbox One. Didn't work out. You don't want to stretch out Nintendo Switch too long to the point where, yeah, people are so over it and they're not excited for the new one. You create this, poor window. You want to, right at the right time, introduce it while it's still hot, bringing the new one in. The longer Nintendo waits, though, the more significant of an upgrade the Nintendo Switch 2 will be over the Nintendo Switch. So it really could be like a 10-year gap, which is crazy to think for Nintendo to do. A 2027 successor, Nintendo Switch 2 officially dropping then. I think that's a little bit too late, you know? Uh, I, I could see a mid-generation refresh, which would come in past the halfway point. But seriously, a November 2022 or March 2023 Nintendo Switch Pro or Plus, and then perhaps a November 2024, that's about when I would call it. Maybe pushing it to March 2025 Nintendo Switch 2. That would be the limit I think that Nintendo should aim for. An 8-year console cycle between Nintendo Switch and Nintendo Switch 2. 8 years. You know, at that 2-year mark, you had the Lite. At that 4-year mark, you had the OLED model. At the 6-year mark, you had the Plus, Pro, New, 4K, whatever you want to call it. And then at the 8-year mark, that's the new system. You have a giant install base at that point. You reduce the price of all these old Nintendo Switches. If you didn't already incorporate a player's choice lineup, now you do. You support the old system for a little bit longer while you're rolling in the Nintendo Switch 2, making the games work on both. Make sure that the new system is backwards compatible, and start releasing new, bigger, better exclusives just for that system. I think Nintendo is back. I just hope they keep it. It's hard to stay number one in this industry. Nobody stays one forever. Unless if you're Nintendo in handhelds. They've always been number one in handhelds. But now that the lines are starting to blur between console, TV, console, handheld, it's getting more and more interesting, I think. Speaking of interesting, we're spending a lot of time talking about the sales, by the way, so hopefully you're okay with that. The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword launched mid-July. Now, it only had 2.5 months of time on the market for this quarter report, and it sold 3.6 million copies. 3.6 million in 2.5 months. The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword on Wii came out in November of 2011. 5 years into the Nintendo Switch's, 5 years into Wii's life. Its lifetime to date was 3.67 million. On a system that had close to 90 million at the time, it only sold 3.67 million. That's kind of the problem is, yeah, large install base, but the ecosystem was already changing. It was already starting to be less healthy. There wasn't as much hype. Nintendo's Wii was already underpowered compared to Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 that came out, along the same time. PS3 same year, Xbox 360 a year before. But now that difference in visual fidelity was starting to get more and more apparent towards the end. Wii's generation was an interesting one because it was so big, but it also was big by a lot of new gamers, different casual market. So you didn't have Skyward Sword, which is a great game, sell 10 million, which would have been to a tenth of the audience. So in 2.5 months, Skyward Sword HD is just 70,000 copies shy of beating Skyward Sword on Wii's lifetime. It definitely will. It's going to sell another million easily, I would say. So you're looking at 4.5 million at that point. To be fair, if you wanted to go with a more conservative number, 4.5 million should very well be doable, which is only 900,000 more, not even a full million for this game's lifetime. I think it's going to do even better than that. This last quarter of the year, it's also got the benefit of holidays, which all of these titles should do better as a result. Plus, nothing's ever been fully price dropped permanently. Maybe Skyward Sword hits 5, 6, 7 million. We'll see. New Pokemon Snap, that game released this February. It's now at 2.19 million. and more because it's not including all sales that come out of Japan. Mario Golf Super Rush, that came out this year. It's at 1.94 million. Miitopia, another new game that's a million seller, at 1.37 million. So you can see there are a lot of games on Nintendo Switch that are million sellers, and this doesn't include something like Monster Hunter Rise, which is a 7.5 million seller because it's a third-party game, so it's not included in Nintendo's own list. But other games are million sellers beyond Nintendo's own IP, the games that they have created, and it's just really impressive. So congratulations to Nintendo. This has been a fun list. I'm excited to see the battle continue for the rest of the year, you know? We saw Nintendo Switch break 33 months. PS5 took over for September. I expect Nintendo to take it back for October. I don't know if we'll ever have, a console that does that again. You could look at systems in the past and say, well, we had more months at number one, but only more months at number one with just home consoles in mind. PS2 had more months at number one, but just with home consoles at mind. You have to look at consoles overall, with both handhelds consoles and TV consoles both being into the mix. Nintendo Switch is the king in those regards. And that's going to be something hard to beat, I don't think it will for a very long time, but we'll see. The industry is an interesting one. Okay, next up, a real quick update. Animal Crossing, Happy Home Paradise, we mentioned it earlier, in sales, how great it's continuing to do. It was supposed to have its Happy Home Paradise DLC expansion drop tomorrow, November 5th, but it came out yesterday, November 3rd, a full 2 days early. So pretty cool. If you haven't already downloaded it and you are a member of the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack, go ahead and enjoy. All right. And if you are not tired enough yet of sales talk, we've got to go over our Famitsu sales charts coming out of Japan. This is for week 44 of 2021, occupying October 25th through October 31st. Thank you to Chris1964 from the installbaseforum.com forums for putting this nice list together. At number one is the newly debuted Mario Party Superstars with 163,000 copies sold. At 2 is Super Robot Wars 30 on Nintendo Switch with 70,849. At 3 is Super Robot Wars 30 on PlayStation 4 with 60,000. So you got a 10,000 difference right there. At 4 is the PlayStation 4 version of Fatal Frame Black Maiden of Water with 22,000. That's a port from Wii U era. At 5 is Tokimeki Memorial for Nintendo Switch with 21,000. At 6 is the Nintendo Switch version of Fatal Frame Maiden of Blackwater with 20,000. So you're looking at a 1,700 or so copy difference between the PS4 and the Nintendo Switch versions of Fatal Frame. That's not including digital, of course, but to be fair, probably the PS4 version sold a little more digitally than Nintendo Switches, but maybe not. At 7 is the PS4 Demon Slayer with another 9,300 added to it. At 8 is Super Smash Bros. Ultimate with 9,200. At 9 is Mario Kart 8 Deluxe with 8,800. And at 10 is Minecraft on Nintendo Switch with 8,700. The top 10 breaks down at 7 for Nintendo Switch, 3 for PlayStation 4. Pretty good split considering, seeing some evergreens, seeing a lot of new titles launch, some multi-platform stuff. Pretty cool. Everyone's eating a bit, right? For hardware, Nintendo Switch was the best-selling console of the week with 74,803. PlayStation 5 with a pretty healthy 24,000, especially looking over last week's. It had a 10,000 bump. Xbox Series brand, 2,800, down 1,000 from the previous week. PlayStation 4 with 1,900, up 1,500. That's pretty cool. And 3DS at 366, which is down by, less than 100 from the previous week. Nintendo Switch, they're having a tough time allocating stock, especially for the OLED model. This is not a lack of interest, folks. This is not, 34,000 fewer systems were sold for Nintendo Switch. People aren't interested in OLED. No, they are. It's a matter of spreading out the systems all across the world, dealing with a chip shortage, and making sure that for the biggest time of the year, the holidays, the last 3 months, yeah, but like the last 6 weeks or so, really, that there are just a lot of consoles available. So it's a tough thing to manage. If you look at the breakdown of Nintendo Switch, you have 30,805. You've got 10,150, and you have 33,848. The base model ended up selling the most, but not because people don't want to spend the extra $50 or equivalent in yen for OLED. No, the OLED, this is the first time it has sold fewer, but that's because it's hard to make enough. Trust me. Nintendo Switch is doing fine. OLED model is doing fine. We're going to see some amazing numbers by the end of the year, provided Nintendo could release enough. PlayStation 5, it will probably hit 1 million soon for the year in a couple of more weeks. And then we've got the holidays to look at. We're going to see some big numbers. Hopefully Xbox could release more, hit 100,000 for the year. See if you could hit 150, in less than a year and a half. I think that's likely as long as Xbox can make enough. And that's going to do it for today's video game news. It was very Nintendo oriented in the beginning. Hopefully you didn't mind that, but that was the biggest thing to talk about today was Nintendo's quarter financial results and kind of the outlook on the future. Famitsu talk, of course, and the Animal Crossing talk also being Nintendo related. Sometimes one company gets a little bit more attention, but that's what it is sometimes, right? Thank you for watching. This is PGN signing out. Hope you all have a good rest of your day, and I will see you next time for more video game news. Take it easy. Bye.